Scary telling. I've always been a bit of a loner. I prefer to keep to myself, and I've never been one for making friends. But lately, things have been getting strange. Whenever I look in the mirror, I don't see myself. Instead, I see someone else. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. Maybe I was tired, or stressed, or something. But it kept happening, night after night. And the people I saw in the mirror were always different. Men and women, young and old, all staring back at me with haunted eyes. I started to do some research, trying to figure out what was going on. That's when I discovered the truth. All of the people I saw in the mirror were dead, and they all had something in common with me. They were all people who had been involved in a car accident, just like me. A few years ago, I had been driving home from work while I was hit by a drunk driver. I survived, but just barely. And now, it seemed that the ghosts of those who hadn't been so lucky were haunting me. I tried to ignore them, to convince myself that it was just a coincidence. But the visions in the mirror only grew stronger, more insistent. And then, something even stranger happened. I was walking home one night when I saw a figure in the distance, walking towards me. As it got closer, I realized that it was one of the people I had seen in the mirror. A woman, middle-aged, with long brown hair and a haunted expression. I froze, unsure of what to do. But the woman just kept walking towards me, until she was right in front of me. And then, she spoke. "I need your help," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I was terrified, but something in her eyes made me want to help her. She told me that she had been killed in the same car accident as me, but that her spirit was trapped in this world. She needed my help to move on, to find peace. I didn't know how to help her, but I couldn't just leave her there. Together, we started to investigate, trying to find a way to free her spirit. We talked to psychics, to ghost hunters, to anyone who might have some insight into what was happening to me. And then, we found something. A book hidden away in a dusty corner of the library. It was ancient, filled with arcane symbols and strange incantations. But there was one passage that stood out to us, a spell that promised to banish ghosts back to the afterlife. We decided to try it. It was dangerous, and we didn't know what would happen. But we had to try. We went to the place where the car accident had happened, and I recited the spell from the book. And then, something incredible happened. The ghosts started to disappear. One by one, they faded away, until there was only me and the woman left. And then, she too vanished, her spirit finally free to move on. I was exhausted, emotionally and physically drained. But I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in years. The ghosts were gone, and I could finally move on with my life. But then, something else happened. I looked in the mirror, and saw myself. But there was something different about my reflection. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. And then, I realized what it was. My reflection was smiling. I never believed in ghosts until that fateful night. It was a typical Tuesday, and I was sitting in my living room, reading a book, when I noticed something strange happening with the curtains. They were flopping back and forth, as if someone was trying to pull them closed. At first, I thought it was just a draft, but then I realized the window was closed. Curiosity got the better of me, and I got up to inspect the curtains. As I approached the window, I felt a chill run down my spine. Something didn't feel right. I peered out into the darkness, but I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. Just as I was about to turn away from the window, I heard a noise coming from the bathroom. It sounded like the door had slammed shut. I made my way down the hallway, and as I approached the bathroom, I noticed that the door was locked from the inside. I tried to force the door open, but it wouldn't budge. I called out to see if anyone was inside, but there was no answer. The silence was deafening. I began to panic, wondering how I was going to get out of this situation. Finally, I managed to force the door open. To my surprise, nobody was inside the bathroom. It was completely empty. I searched the entire house, but there was no sign of anyone or anything that could have caused the door to slam shut and lock from the inside. That's when I noticed the temperature dropping. It was getting colder by the minute, and I could feel a presence in the room. It was like someone, or something, was watching me. I tried to leave the house, but the front door was stuck. It wouldn't open, no matter how hard I tried. I was trapped. The air was thick with an ominous feeling, and I knew I wasn't alone. As I turned to make my way back to the living room, I saw a figure in the shadows. It was tall and slender, with long arms that reached out to grab me. I tried to scream, but no sound came out of my mouth. I don't remember much after that. All I know is that I woke up the next morning, safe and sound, but with a feeling of dread that lingered for weeks. I never went back to that house again, but the memory of that night still haunts me to this day.
Some say that the house on 46 Mill Street is cursed, that it's haunted by the ghosts of the previous owners.
Others say that it's just an old house, with a lot of history and a lot of secrets. But for me, it will always be the place where I came face to face with the unknown, and where I learned to fear the things that go bump in the night. I never believed in the supernatural until my newborn baby started talking. It was a typical morning, and I was getting ready for work when I heard my baby's voice. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but then I heard the words clearly. It was a language I had never heard before, and it sent shivers down my spine. I rushed to the baby's room, but everything seemed normal. My baby was lying in his crib, looking up at me with his big, innocent eyes. But then he spoke again, and this time it was louder and more urgent. It was like he was trying to tell me something important. I didn't know what to do, so I took my baby to a linguistics expert to translate the language. It turned out to be an ancient lost language, one that had not been spoken in centuries. The words were chilling, and the message was even more terrifying. My baby was warning me of an apocalyptic event that was about to happen. He spoke of a darkness that would consume the world, of a great evil that would rise up and destroy everything in its path. He spoke of a time when there would be no hope, no salvation, and no escape. At first, I didn't believe it. How could a newborn baby know about an impending apocalypse? But then, strange things started happening. The weather patterns became erratic, the skies turned dark, and the ground shook with tremors. People around me started to panic, but I knew I had to do something. I had to protect my family, my baby, and myself. I spent every moment researching and preparing for the inevitable disaster. I stocked up on supplies, built a shelter, and made sure my loved ones were safe. And then it happened. The world plunged into darkness, and a great evil emerged from the depths of the earth. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before. It consumed everything in its path, leaving only destruction and despair in its wake. But I was ready. My family and I huddled together in our shelter, listening as the world outside was consumed by chaos. We survived the apocalypse, thanks to the warning of my newborn baby. Years have passed since then, and the world is a different place. The skies have cleared, and the ground is stable once again. But I still can't shake the memory of that fateful day, of the moment when my baby spoke in an ancient lost language and warned me of the end of the world. Now, I live every day with the knowledge that anything can happen at any moment. The world is a fragile place, and we must always be prepared for the worst. And sometimes, the most unlikely source can be the key to our survival. I had always enjoyed the solitude of my small apartment, especially at night when the world around me was finally quiet. But one midnight, everything changed. I was alone in my bedroom, scrolling through my phone when I heard a sound coming from my kitchen. It sounded like someone was cooking. I got out of bed and walked to the kitchen, but when I got there, I found no one. I was confused and a bit scared, but I assumed that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. However, the sound continued, and it sounded like someone was cutting meat. I slowly walked into the kitchen and turned on the light. My heart sank when I saw what was on the stove. There were pots filled with different types of meat, and one of them looked like a human hand. I was paralyzed with fear, trying to convince myself that it was all just a bad dream. I looked around the kitchen, but there was no one there. I knew I had to call the police, but the idea of being in the same room as that gruesome sight was too much for me to bear. So, I went back to my room, locked the door, and called the police. As I waited for them to arrive, I heard strange noises coming from the kitchen. It sounded like someone was eating. I was horrified, but I knew I couldn't leave my room. I sat there, trying to calm myself down, but the fear continued to consume me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I heard a knock on my door. It was the police. I let them in and led them to the kitchen. But when we got there, the pots were empty. There was no sign of the meat, no evidence of what I had seen just moments before. The police looked at me with suspicion, questioning my sanity. But I knew what I had seen. I could still smell the cooking meat, feel the fear that had gripped me. As they continued to investigate, I heard strange whispers coming from the walls. The voices were soft at first, but they grew louder and more urgent. It sounded like they were chanting in some unknown language. I tried to block out the noise, but it was impossible. The whispers continued to grow in intensity until they were almost deafening. And then, all of a sudden, they stopped. The police found no evidence of any cooking, no human parts, and no explanation for the strange noises. They left me alone in my apartment, telling me to call them if anything else happened. But the whispers never stopped. Every night, they would come back, taunting me, reminding me of what I had seen. And then, one night, I woke up to find a stranger in my room. It was the same man I had seen in the kitchen, cutting up the meat. He smiled at me, revealing a row of sharp teeth. "It's time to eat," he said. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I was paralyzed with fear as he approached me, his knife gleaming in the moonlight. And then, I woke up. It had all been a nightmare, a figment of my imagination. I was relieved, but the fear lingered, haunting me every time I entered my kitchen at night. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike. I've never been one to believe in ghosts or demons or anything supernatural. But ever since I moved into this new house, I've been seeing things that I can't explain. It started with the clown. Every night, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I see him standing at the foot of my bed. He's always smiling that same eerie smile, and I can't help but feel like he's watching me. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. Maybe I was just tired, and my mind was playing tricks on me. But then I started seeing him during the day too. He would be standing in the corner of my room or peeking out from behind the curtains. I tried to ignore it, but it was getting harder and harder to do. Every time I woke up to see that creepy clown, I felt like I was losing my mind. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus on anything else. All I could think about was that damn clown. So one night, I decided to confront him. I jumped out of bed and ran at him, ready to attack. But the moment I swung my fist, I felt a sharp pain in my arm. I looked down, and my arm was bruised and bloody. I tried again, but the same thing happened. Every time I tried to attack the clown, I was the one who got hurt. It was like he was invincible, like he couldn't be touched. I didn't know what to do. I was trapped in my own house, haunted by this smiling clown. I tried to leave, but every door and window was locked tight. It was like the house was holding me captive. Days turned into weeks, and I felt like I was losing my mind. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping. All I could do was stare at that clown and wonder what it wanted from me. And then, one day, it spoke to me. Its voice was raspy and low, like it hadn't been used in centuries. It told me that it had been waiting for me, watching me for years, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. It told me that it had chosen me, that I was special. It said that it would never let me leave, that I would be trapped in this house forever. I screamed and cried and begged for it to leave me alone, but it just kept smiling that same eerie smile. It was like it was enjoying my torment, like it was feeding off my fear. I don't know how long I was trapped in that house. It could have been days or weeks or even months. Time lost all meaning when I was in the presence of that clown. But one day, I woke up and it was gone. The house was silent, and the clown was nowhere to be seen. I ran out of the house, never looking back. Years have passed since then, but I still have nightmares about that clown. Its haunting smile and raspy voice still echo in my mind, and I can never escape the feeling that it's watching me, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again.